So the next thing is briefly describe the nature of policy of Dhamma of Ashoka. Any one of you, except apart from Deepika, who want to speak about the question? Anyone? I mean something. No? Please make it an interactive session here. I'm getting bored listening to my own voice.
Hemant and Swami, I think you can try answering.
Yeah. No need to answer, Hemant. Just like you express your feelings. Whatever. You see, it's like make it a fun. I mean, little. Not like don't be so kind of formal. That will make things better. Yeah, Kiran is on. Kiran, you want to talk something? Hemant Gautam has proposed your name. Something, no? What have you understood of the question? I mean, what do you think the question demands? I mean, something, yeah? Like, you see, what do you think the question demands? Anything, you see, you have to speak, man, like, something you have to speak. That really helps a lot in your interview stage and all that. Even in mains is about expression. You see, expression, it is not like it doesn't come from the pen, no? It comes from your brain, you see. When you talk, actually, those circuits, they become flexible. You have to leave those apprehensions. That's all this exam is about. You have to come up boldly and all. Someone speak. I'll pick up the name. Okay. Hemant, say something. Unmute yourself. Am I looking that serious? Hemant? Yeah, okay, Deepika. Speak.
Sir, how Ashoka used his dharma in implementing both internal and external policy. For example, in internal policy, he asked the tribal people to follow dharma, and he asked the fishermen to give up killing of animals and shift to agriculture. And then he sent external policy. He sent ambassadors to other kingdoms.
Yeah.
So all those we can read. Like he was tolerant to all the other religions, not only Buddhism but also all the other religions. And his dharma is not a sectarian faith. Like it does not promote a single sector, like sect.
Yeah. Oh, fine. You are thinking on the right lines. Yeah. Anyone else? Anyone? Okay, fine. So you see, briefly describe the nature of policy of Dhamma of Ashoka. So here, like when you attempt this question, you should not get carried away by Buddha's Dharma or Ashtangik Marga. You see, because that is the chief distinction you have to make. You should not jump into the question with Ashtangik Marga or Chaturvane, Arya Satyam and all these things. The question demands the nature. What is the nature of the policy of Ashoka's Dharma? And you have to chiefly focus on, as Deepika has said, what was the necessity, features, relationship with Buddhism, and measures taken to promote. Okay, all these things, they point towards like what is the nature of the Ashoka's Dharma, you see. And it is not about writing the features of Ashoka's Dharma, you see. You can't just go on writing whatever 14 edits are there. This edit speaks about that edit speaks about this. Usually, many of the times, you see, that's how traditionally people approach. They jump into the question and then they know whatever they write, whatever they know. Edit 1 speaks about non-violence, edit 2 speaks about this, edit 3 speaks about this. Those are that's all true, but you have to make use of all those things in expressing what is the nature of the dharma, by what has necessitated Ashoka to, you see, formulate such a dharma. And then you see, is Ashoka real? You see, some things are quite funny. I mean, when history is written, it's not like you see, the historian should be very, very careful. Historian, not we. Historian should be very careful to interpret things, because you see, history is it's not like today some person will write in Republic paper or other person will write in Quint or Print. There will be two opposing views. Might be everything is politically patronage. But you see, it's not, in olden days it was not like that. It was almost and always like only one pointed projection. That is, the king's court will give you the literature or inscriptions or whatever it is. You see, it's like hagiography they call it. That is praising of the king. Essentially, that is the thing. Like when you take many of the, especially literary sources, when you are studying in history, it's almost like they'll glorify the king, that the king has done this, the king has done that, and all. So, for example, in this case, when you take Ashoka, he all of a sudden, that's what you see, our literary sources say, all of a sudden he, after the Kalinga battles, he becomes enlightened, and then he takes the path of peace, and then he has done everything. But you see, there was also a great political activity after that. You see, it's not that Ashoka has issued or left the kingdom and what's that, his throne. It's not that case. If you take his father's case, that is true. When you take Chandragupta Maurya, that person, he has really abdicated the throne, and then he takes up Jainism. He comes to South India and Shravan Bilgola, I suppose, and then there he performs Sulekhana, that is starving to death. So that can be taken as, you see, a complete kind of transition or whatever, if we can call it enlightenment. So when you take Ashoka, it was not the case. The religion was very much, or the Buddhist principles were very much used to make a political significance or a political signature. You see, that is, how do you know that Ashoka was the Ashoka the Great? Why is he called the Great? You see, because that's one of the first kings who have expanded to the southernmost tip of the continent. And how do you know he has expanded? That is from the edicts, you see, the rock edicts. That's how you know that the kingdom has expanded. And it is not a religious activity, it's like a political expansion only. So when you speak about Ashoka Dharma, you speak like, you can chiefly speak in the first introduction, you can say it was an expansion of Ashoka's imperial outlook, you see. And policy of Dharma represents a comprehensive policy characterized by social, moral, ethical, and humanistic elements. We can't deny that those were not there, but as Deepika has said, it was chiefly an imperialistic expansion, and it also encompassed it was a comprehensive policy which was characterized by social, moral, ethical, and humanistic elements. So, and then that is the introduction, and the body, you will come and you can show various rock edicts. There are a total of 14 rock edicts, and you can mention, and also pillar edicts are there. Many edicts are there. I don't want to give, you see, what each edict has spoken about. That we can do later when we deal with each topic in individual this one. So when you come about rock edicts 4, there they speak about humanistic values, where you have to be passionate or compassionate, where you have to be compassionate towards servants, you see. And there are certain rock edicts where you have to be compassionate towards other sects. That's rock edict 6, I think, where other religious sects should also be compassionate about. And then there are other rock edict 1, where you see the non-violence is given up except for 1 peacock and 2 deers, 2 peacocks and 1 deer in the royal court, they can be eaten, but other animals should be spared. It speaks about certain kind of non-violence, okay. And like that, you can go about many, not all the 14 rock edicts, but the major ones, and especially those which point towards what you have spoken about in introduction, that is ethics, humanistic values, moral values, social values. 4 or 5 you can quote, and then you can leave the others. Don't write everything there. And you will show its relation with Buddhism, and you see, chiefly all these policy of the, not policy of Dharma, the features of Dharma or the minute pointers of Dharma, they have been borrowed, not borrowed, or Buddhism has got almost a direct or a great influence on it. So when you speak about Buddhism, you can say like the Ashoka's Dharma has got a great reflection or or a great consonance with the Buddhism, the Ashtangika Marga of Buddha, which speaks about there are 8: right vision, right action, right livelihood, right understanding, right action, right faith. Eight will be there. So few you can mention, and these principles which are given by Buddha, they find an expression in the policy of dharma. And measures taken, that is the imperialistic expansion of Ashoka's policy. You see, that is like Deepika has pointed out, right? The internal and the external machines which have gone and spread the dharma and also the influence of Ashoka. So that's how you will approach the question. Fine? Happy? Any questions? Anyone? Fine. Shall we now go to the next one?